Assalamualaikum everyone. Thank you all for attending this event in person, and thank you everyone tuning in online. Today's event will be a question and answer session with Sheikh Dr. Mehdi Hazari, who is visiting from North Carolina. Sheikh Hazari is truly gifted. He has a remarkable ability to put hadiths and quotes into perspective using everyday examples. If any of you didn't have the chance to tune in to last night's majlis, I highly recommend everyone watching it. It's on IC Husseini's English YouTube channel. You can also follow Sheikh Hazari on Instagram at sheikhdr.mehdi. That's SHEIKH Dr. Dr.Mehdi, M-E-H-D-I. Sheikh Hazari and his wife, Hajra Chanaz Kabasi Hazari, have each wrote a book. Sheikh Hazari's book is titled Who is Hussein, and his wife's book is titled Who is Zainab. Both books are available to purchase for free download. The links for both books are available under IEC Youth Group's link in bio. Please follow IEC Youth Group on Instagram at IEC Youth Group. And again, both links are available to download on IEC Youth Group's Instagram link. Sheikh will continue his majlis series every night up until Tuesday night, every night at 8 p.m. His series topic is Islam outdated, or do we need to catch up on God's religion? When I brought up this topic, peer pressure and substance use, to Maulana Mehdi, he said that this is a much needed topic, but a very delicate one as well. So we need to find someone who is able to provide solutions. And inshallah, Sheikh Dr. Hazari will do that. I would like to just say that this is a real honor for IC Husseini and IC Youth Group to have you be a part of this event where we can get the answers we need to handle this delicate situation. Thank you, Sheikh, for coming here and being part of this event. If everyone could please recite a loud salawat for Sheikh Hazari, his family, and everyone who took part in having him come here. Before we begin the program, we must go over a few announcements. First and foremost, all COVID-19 safety regulations will be enforced, so please have your masks and social distance when you're in this hall. Some refreshments are in the back, if you guys all saw. If you guys do want refreshments, just please eat and take off your mask back there. Second announcement, IC Youth Group merchandise is on sale. If you guys already saw that, $15 for the long sleeves, $5 for the Karbala magnets. And also, there's a few educational resources for some children and some students. Third announcement, English and Urdu Majlis series will continue to be held tonight until Tuesday at 8 p.m. every night. Urban Downtown Julus will be taking place in Chicago tomorrow at 10 a.m. More info could be found on IEC's website. The parking garage will be the Poetry Garage. Inshallah, on Tuesday, September 28th, the IEC Arbaeen Walk will take place at 10 a.m. For those who wish to take part, please arrive at IEC at 10 a.m. and shuttle services will drop you off based off location of your choosing, either a 2-mile walk or a 3.5-mile walk. For more information, again, please visit IEC Husseini's website. And lastly, many of our Shia brothers and sisters from around the world and from this community have been blessed with ziyarat during the special time of year, during Arbaeen. Let's all pray for their safety and for all of them to have a successful ziyarat. Please recite aloud salawat. Now that the announcements are out of the way, let me quickly go over the agendas for today's program. First thing, I'm going to go over how this topic came to be and the main reasons why we are discussing today's topic of combating peer pressure and substance use. Then I'm going to call up Brother Imam Imran Khan to go over the harmful effects of drug use. Inshallah, then I will call upon Sheikh Dr. Mehdi Hazari to lead the Q&A and begin with the questions that have already been sent in. Once the preliminary questions have been answered, we will open the floor up to questions in the room. For all of those watching online, if you would like to ask a question, please text me, and if we have time, we will go over them. My number is on the flyer, and it's also, I'll say right now, it's 630-818-0210. Again, we will start the Q&A with prepared questions, then questions from inside the room, and if we have time, the questions that have been sent from online viewers. Once the Q&A session is complete, which will inshallah be around 6:30, depending on how many questions we all have inside, and then pizza inshallah will be served. Ladies, if you would like to ask the Sheikh any questions privately, the Sheikh has agreed to be able to meet with you all after the Q&A has concluded. You guys could just stay right here and then he'll be able to talk to you one-on-one. Also, just again, please make sure to stop by the youth group table to purchase your youth group apparel. And please keep this hall clean. There will be majlis here tonight, so please just throw away your garbage and don't make any mess. If everyone can please recite Allahu Salawat. All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Now let's officially begin the program. I don't want to take any more of your time, but I think it's very important to go over how this topic came to light and go over the goals of today's Q&A session. So a week or two before Muharram began, a few youth group members came to me and said, Sean, we need to talk to you about something. I asked, what was it? They both looked at each other and then they both said, drugs. We have a drug problem at IC, specifically weed. The reason why we are all here discussing the topic of combating peer pressure and substance use today is because these youth had the courage to vocalize their concerns. And now look, alhamdulillah, all of us has gathered here to discuss a major issue that is taking place and affecting the future of this community. And let me just say something. I want everyone here and everyone watching online to realize that if you want to see change, you have to be the one to take action. If you think things can improve or have topics that you think are necessary the community should discuss, be vocal and take action. If you want to share your ideas, reach out to me or any of the volunteers you see here. We want your help in making IC and its youth group work for your needs. It's necessary for me to say this because you seldom see youth be vocal about their concerns. Nobody should be afraid to speak up, especially if it's coming from your heart. Please recite aloud Salawat. So after a long conversation with these individuals, there were three main concerns they had. First, youth from the IEC community are smoking weed on a daily basis, and they say that they aren't addicted and that they could stop whenever they want. Because of them smoking so much, they are losing touch with who they are, their goals, dreams, and aspirations. Some goals of this session are to clear the misconceptions people have on drugs, find better ways to be themselves without the use of drugs, and of course, learn how to say no. The second concern they had was of parents being unaware of what's happening. They mentioned some parents have an idea that their children smoke but do not advise against it, and because of this, that's a big concern. In most U.S. education systems, the topic of drug abuse first happens in sixth grade health class. I urge parents to discuss with their kids earlier about the misuse of drugs at an earlier age. That way, children are more knowledgeable when they come into sixth grade health class. One of the goals of this session is to have parents more aware about what's happening in the community. With parents being more aware, they will hopefully be able to have better discussions about drugs and things their children are going through with and dealing with in their lives. Because let's face it, the common Indo-Pak Muslim household avoids topics such as these. But as parents, you need to be able to be accessible to your children, have knowledge of what's going on, and know how to have these conversations. The third and final concern that they had was of kids smoking weed on IEC premises. This is a major concern because they said that they witnessed kids smoking inside IEC bathrooms and outside in the parking lot. Ever since Illinois legalized marijuana, youth now have access to obtain marijuana easily from a dispensary shop and have access to many forms of weed like oil, which makes it easy for them to smoke indoors, hence their ability to smoke in IEC bathrooms. Illinois and countless other states have now legalized weed. Per the National Conference of State Legislators, NCSL database, all but 3 states have some form of public cannabis access program. Those 3 states are Idaho, Nebraska, and Kansas. That means 3 out of 50 states have either legalized or decriminalized cannabis as of 2021. As a Shia community, we need to be able to have conversations on how to deal with this haram and forbidden drug. And to further shed light on the issue, some state legislators are beginning to discuss the legalization of psychedelic drugs like magic mushrooms. This is the time we need to come together as a community to figure out what ways youth can be themselves without the use of any of these substances. Shia youth should feel comfortable in their natural state and not feel pressured by peers or society. Inshallah, the goal of this question and answer session is to alleviate any misconceptions youth have regarding drugs and get answers on how they can combat peer pressure and substance use. With that being said, I would like to now call upon Brother Dr. Imran Khan to discuss the harmful effects of drugs. If everyone could please recite a loud salawat. Should I sit down? Yeah, you can sit down.
All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. January 1st, 2014, Colorado became the first state to legalize marijuana for recreational use, an action that sent shockwaves throughout the United States. Since then, 18 states have legalized the use of marijuana for recreational use, including Illinois, which began sales to adults starting January 1st of 2020. Marijuana has been used for medicinal purposes for over 100 years, but now it's being advertised as a pleasurable drug. In fact, there's a lot of misinformation that's being circulated about its use, and some of those misinformation saying it's like a natural remedy, that if you take it, you'll recover from your illness a lot faster. Or, there's no recorded cases of death by marijuana or overdose ever. As a youth, hearing all of this might sound attractive, especially when you see all the different forms that marijuana comes in, like cookies and brownies and popsicles. And there's even a tea form that you can get marijuana. But the fact is that what is real and what is fiction? Today I will share with you what we know and what we've learned since that historic 2014 ruling of Colorado legalizing marijuana and the view of marijuana from the Islamic perspective. Now that Illinois has legalized marijuana, I'm sure that many of you have either known someone who has used marijuana or walked in the streets and smelled marijuana or even driven past a marijuana dispensary. But people will argue with you and they'll try to convince you saying that marijuana is safe to use, and they'll even push their personal agenda and have you try it. But before you start puffing, let me share with you 5 important points, lessons that we've learned from marijuana. Number 1. So it's legal in the state, so that means that it must be safe to use, right? Well, at one time, marijuana was considered a dangerous drug. But now we've seen a pretty significant shift in attitude, and that perception of risk from using marijuana has plummeted, as indicated by the increased usage. Marijuana can be smoken or eaten. Eating it can be potentially more dangerous than smoking it, and has in fact led to poisoning. The fact is that marijuana is addictive, and research has shown us that 1 in 6 people who start using the drug before the age of 18 will become addicted. And 1 in 10 adults who use the drug will become addicted. And I've heard our youth mention that clearly marijuana must not be so bad if the government is making it legal. So shouldn't Islam reconsider its position? Well, just because an item has been declared by the government as legal, that does not have any impact on Sharia laws. This is the same government that legalized alcohol, and last time I checked, it wasn't halal in Islam. So in Islam, ruling is based on Sharia values and not on approval or disapproval of the government. Number 2, today's marijuana is more potent than anything we've ever studied. THC is the main psychoactive ingredient in marijuana, and typically it's a measure of potency. Over the past decade, the quantity of THC in marijuana in the United States has risen steadily. But the change has been more dramatic in states where marijuana is legal. Today, marijuana has 3 times the concentration of THC when you compare it to 25 years ago. The higher the THC amount means the stronger the effects on the brain and more likely to lead to higher rates of dependency and addiction. Number 3. It might help you sleep, but it won't help you rest. Marijuana is a sedative. It's a hypnotic. So it will help you crash at bedtime, but don't expect yourself to feel well rested the next day. Using marijuana interferes with the body's natural sleep cycle, causing significant increases in daytime sleepiness, anxiety, irritability, and jumpiness. In a healthy sleep cycle, your body should rotate between deep sleep and rapid eye movement, what they call REM sleep. That's where most dreams occur. However, several times throughout the night, you're spending less time in sleep, in deep sleep with each cycle and more in REM. But when they reviewed sleep studies with people who have used marijuana, they saw that increased use of time was spent in the deep sleep, not in the REM. So they're not getting that the dreams and where the resting happens. Number 4, it messes with your head longer than you think. THC affects the area of the brain that's associated with memory, learning, attention, thinking, and decision making. After marijuana use, the neurons in the brain, they get suppressed. They fire, but they fire at a rate that's a lot lower and a lot slower than they could be and they should be. A research study in 2010 paid consistent marijuana users, teenage users, to stop using marijuana, and they wanted to see how long did it take their brain to recover. Some effects wore off after 2 to 3 weeks, but some attention deficits remained for at least 3 weeks. Long-term or frequent marijuana use has been linked to increased risk of psychosis and schizophrenia in some users. I knew of a youth very well respected in the community. Straight A's, wanted to go to medical school. Very respectful when you spoke to him. When he was in high school, at some point, he used marijuana. Not really sure how long he used marijuana, but he used it. And what it did was it opened up the center in his brain that caused psychosis. He became schizophrenic. He went into rage. He went into depression. He lost his career. He lost his grades. I spoke to his parents, and his parents told me that my son has died. I don't know who this kid is anymore, but my kid is dead. And the last thing, number 5, marijuana affects your driving. Since recreational marijuana was legalized in Colorado in 2014, researchers looked at marijuana-related traffic deaths from 2014 to 2018. They saw a 151% increase in marijuana-related traffic deaths. This equates to 1 person killed every 2.5 days. In the state of Washington, for the first time, drug-related driving deaths now outnumber drunk-related driving deaths. So how long does it take THC to leave your system? Well, a study in 2007 actually, showed that it would take the average man 3 hours for it to leave their system. But the THC content back then was a lot lower than it is now. So in the newer studies, they recommend waiting 5 to 6 hours before driving. And if it's an edible, experts recommend not even driving at all that day. So what does Islam say about marijuana use? And I briefly want to touch on this because I know that Sheikh Mehdi will discuss this in more detail. But from an Islamic perspective, anything which intoxicates is haram. The Holy Prophet ﷺ has stated that every intoxicant is prohibited. And Imam Bakr ﷺ said, whatever substance intoxicates when consumed in large amounts is prohibited even in small amounts. We find that our muraja are unanimous when it comes to intoxicants. Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani, may Allah lengthen his life, says that it is forbidden to drink wine, beer, and everything that causes intoxication or drunkenness in solid or liquid form. So we find that intoxicated drugs are haram, except for medicinal use, only that it only should be prescribed and based on the permission of a qualified physician. So to conclude, marijuana use is on the rise among all ages and especially within the 18 to 25 year olds. We're seeing that it's being used within our community, as Brother Sean Rizvi had mentioned, and today's marijuana is stronger than ever before in causing people to become addicted. So it's important for you to know all of the risks before you put anything inside your body. And after today, inshallah, you'll have a better understanding on the effects of marijuana use. Thank you. Salawat.
Thank you, Brother Dr. Aman Khan. Sheikh, I will now ask you to please come up. And then inshallah, if you could just please begin with a 2-3 minute, little introduction to the topic. Thank you.
بسم الله. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الغوي الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, Dr. Khan already, mashallah, gave a very nice perspective on marijuana in particular, but I want to say that really addiction of any kind, and I am by no means a specialist on addiction, but addiction of any kind is something that human beings need to address fundamentally, because that is something that is innately sort of buried within our minds, within our psyches, and how we behave in life, and it can apply to anything in life. And yet the most extreme of those circumstances, when you talk about marijuana, cocaine, these sorts of things, is obviously quite severe. And not only is it severe, but its ramifications not only on the person's life, but certainly on other aspects of their interaction with others, their role in society, their potential to be positive contributors, is going to be damaging and can have lasting effects, certainly. So these are things that you have to consider. And as was already mentioned, Islam has a very clear and very obvious answer to this, and what is permissible and what is not permissible, what is allowed and not allowed. And I think part of the challenge for us is, especially as we talk about marijuana today in this session, is the logic behind a ruling. Let me say this to begin with, that it is not always possible to have a logical explanation for why something is permissible or not permissible. Some things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us an explanation. For example, if you talk about gambling, gambling is haram. It is not permissible to gamble. Why? Because it is a source of fasad. It is a source of corruption in society. People can lose their money, they become addicted to gambling, and it can be a loss of resources. You know the reasoning behind it. It's logical. It makes sense. But that doesn't apply to everything that we do. Yet, as a believer in Allah, our first step is to obey, even if we sometimes don't understand the reasoning behind a law or why Allah says it to be permissible or not permissible, particularly in the things that other people justify doing. And it has already been mentioned that alcohol is allowed. Legally, it's allowed to drink in basically most of the world. Even in Muslim countries, alcohol is served and legally allowed to be consumed. In majority Muslim countries, does that mean that suddenly now Islam conforms to that and allows it for Muslims? No, it does not. Because Islam's rules are above society. Allah's rules are for all of mankind, for all of humanity, and they are based on the wisdom of the Shari', of the one who has legislated those rules. So these are the things to consider. And intoxication, any substance that is an intoxicant, is prohibited. Just that simple. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Whether it is consumed as an edible, brownies, I know people take them as brownies. I'm not even sure what that would taste like, to be honest. Or smoking it. And I, having gone to college here, know what that smells like. It's quite pungent. I'm not sure why anyone would want to breathe that in any form. Drinking it, it will become an intoxicant, and hence it is prohibited, absolutely prohibited. There's no question on this matter, all right? So as far as the questions, do you want me just to read them and go through? Okay, go ahead. Whenever you're ready.
So yes, we will first begin with the questions that we have already received. So for the people who sent them in, if you do not hear your specific question, I kind of merged similar questions together. So I apologize if you do not hear your specific questions. But Sheikh, the first question is about peer pressure. they ask, how do I avoid being peer pressured? How do I advance my ability to say no?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so let's not just make this me talking the whole time. As it is, I have to do too much of that when I go on these trips. So if you have questions or comments, even strong positions that you have, share them. Don't be afraid. It's always best to be an active participant rather than somebody who's passively listening to something. Be active in anything you do. As far as peer pressure is concerned, from someone who went to high school here, college here, grew up here, I'll say this very frankly to all of you, and maybe some people don't like to hear this, especially your parents, and I being the parent of a college-aged daughter. Peer pressure is inevitable. It is there, all right? That's why Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says that if you stay amongst a group of people for 40 days and 40 nights, you become like them. Because it is human nature to be that way. And there are studies that have demonstrated that there are mirror neurons in the brain, that you see someone doing something, it is your habit to mimic, especially if you see something repeatedly over and over again. Now the question is, in America, in the West where we live, where people don't adhere to Muslim rules, their rules are different, their way of life is different, what can we do? Well, we can sequester ourselves and go live in a cave, all right? Yes? And in cities like Chicago, you can have Muslim schools. Or Dearborn, where I visit quite a bit, you have almost all majority Muslim schools or all Muslim schools. So you can sequester yourself from society and say, well, I'm not going to expose myself to that thing that is haram or that is not my lifestyle, and I'm going to stay away from it, certainly. But tell me in all reality, eventually you're going to finish school, you'll have to go to college. As far as I know, there are no real Muslim colleges in North America just yet. Maybe one day in the future, but even then, are you going to be such that you don't step out into society and are exposed to drinking and people going to clubs and people listening to music and doing all sorts of things that are considered quote-unquote un-Islamic? No, it's impossible. You have accepted the fact that you live in a Western society, in a society that is secular, that is fundamentally non-Islamic, meaning they don't follow our code. So what do? The answer to the question is not easy because it's a constant challenge. You're going to have peer pressure. You're going to experience it. You will feel it down in the bottom of your stomach, essentially. Why? Because there will be a drive to want to do what everybody is doing, to fit in. And the reason for that is because you perceive it to be pleasurable, right? If you see people, a group of people doing something that's not pleasurable, are you going to follow them? You will not. You will not follow them. If you see people doing things that's harmful to themselves, that causes them to become damaged or hurt or, God forbid, die, you're not going to follow them. But if you see a group of people doing something that you see to be pleasurable, then you're going to want to follow because you will perceive it to be pleasurable to yourself. So what do? Well, the only way to combat it is, one, identify it. You have to know what is in front of you. Identify that it is present, it is there in front of your face. Number two, understand and be very clear of how it's affecting you. We often say, no, well, it doesn't impact me, when meanwhile we're the most susceptible to it. Identify that it's affecting you. And number three, ask yourself, why is it affecting you? Why are you being affected by this peer pressure? What is it that's causing you to want to do it? And weigh the pros of you doing it, meaning the temporary pleasure of enacting or becoming a part of this group and doing what they're doing, versus the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the tough part, is how do you weigh something that you can't feel and sense inside of yourself, the pleasure of God, what is waiting as the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, versus something that's already in your hand. How many of you, if someone were to give you $1 million today and say, take it now, versus be patient and I'll give you 100 million in 10 years' time, which one of you will take it? You'll take the 1 million immediately. Why? Because it's in your hand. You've got it. You've taken it from your possession. You have it. You can verify it's there. But 10 years from now, do you know you're going to get 100 million? You don't know. You can't guarantee it. In 10 years, you may be dead. That person could be a liar. They may cheat you, etc. That's how we determine who is going to fall for peer pressure and who will not. And I know that is kind of a philosophical answer, but really the answer to peer pressure is not easy. Because either you go and isolate yourself, and you have only Muslim friends in society, you don't talk to anybody who's a non-Muslim, you stay away, or you say, this is in front of me, and this is how I have to deal with it. I have to address it, I have to identify it, and I have to characterize it. I went a bit long, but I think important question. Yeah, go ahead. Any follow-ups, any comments? Yeah? Come on, you guys have to talk a little, man. Little bit. I know everyone has opinions, but everyone's too afraid to share. There's no judgment here, at least not from me, at least.
The second question is around the same topic about peer pressure, but more specific about friends. So do you have any advice on how to pick our friends? Because peer pressure comes from hanging out with people that are bad influences. How can I do a better job picking out my friends?
Yeah, so that, I think that speaks to it very clearly. Is one very good solution to dealing with peer pressure is staying away from bad people, obviously. That is clear, right? So it's not just really a philosophical answer of how to deal with peer pressure. If you know that the people you are hanging out with are bad, they're doing things that are bad as in according to Islam, then you have to stay away. You should not hang out with those people. It's that simple. Hang out with people who are good human beings, who are good citizens, who are honest, trustworthy. I'll tell you this, that when I grew up in South Florida, there were not a lot of Muslims at that time. All my friends were non-Muslims because there just weren't any Muslims. I think there were 3 Muslims in my high school. My sister, myself, and one other young woman who was not religious at all. And so I had all non-Muslim friends. But I knew that they were honest, trustworthy, good people. They didn't drink, they didn't do drugs, they didn't engage in the things that maybe others were doing. And so I knew that the activities that I had with them are good. And that's what you're looking for when you're trying to make a friend, is not only somebody who reinforces you as a human being, and that's why we have friends, is because we want to feel loved, we want to feel valuable and worthy of something, but also somebody who reinforces what we believe to be lofty. And the only way to know that is to see what they are on the front, how they behave. How do they behave with others? What do they do when they're alone, when nobody is watching them? Meaning, do they do illicit things, things that are illegal, things that are bad? Or are they people who are pure in their very nature? And that's a good way to determine if that person is like-minded to you and can be a worthy friend to you.
So the next questions are going to be more about marijuana, and a lot of the answers you have already, kind of alluded to in the beginning when you first sat down, but you could definitely feel free to just kind of reference those as well. But the next question is: weed has been said to bring you closer to your spiritual side. Then why is it bad? How does weed affect our relationship with Allah?
Yeah, I think they're talking about peyote maybe, not weed. Peyote is the one that, or mushrooms. Shrooms are the ones that people go out into towards Joshua Tree and they smoke up or they drink the mushroom and they become all hallucinogenic. Haram is haram. It's that simple. I mean, there's no other answer to this, that, well, if marijuana makes me more spiritual, does that mean everybody needs to take marijuana? From a logical perspective, if marijuana makes you more spiritual, that means somebody who's not taking it is not as spiritual, right? So imagine, just from a logical perspective, you have no access to marijuana. Does that mean that you're now out of luck? That suddenly you will not be able to fly to Allah because you don't have marijuana? Come on. Logically, it's quite simple, right? That how is it contingent that spirituality is based on anything physical? The water you drink, the food you eat, yes, indeed, halal, haram, yes, you must consider those things, but your spirituality is between you and God. Nothing external can come to that. We believe obviously in the medium and the connection, the wasila of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, but there is no such thing. Now, addressing the fact that, well, it makes you sort of transcendent, makes you fly, yes? You don't need that to be spiritual. You don't need that. Why? Because what people think is that spirituality means you have elevated yourself from a physical existence, isn't it? That when you smoke marijuana, You have become elevated. You don't feel your body. It's as if you're in a different realm. But Islam doesn't advocate that you should become disconnected from the physical world when you worship Allah. It doesn't say that. And the prime example is that even in the battle of Karbala, on the day of Ashura, when Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was fighting, what did they do? They stopped to pray. Prayer is the height of spirituality. Yet in the battlefield they are praying. Which means what? That around them arrows are flying, spears are flying, someone is attacking. Yes, they're being defended by soldiers who are surrounding them. But while they are praying, they are aware of the world around you. And I ask you this question, that if you were praying, yes, let's say you're praying by a riverside, you're there alone, nobody's there, and suddenly you hear the voice of someone in the river drowning in the water. You're in the middle of your salat. What are you obligated to do? You're obligated to break your prayer and do what? Save their life. You must. You must go save their life. But if you're high on marijuana because it makes you spiritually high in your salat, are you going to be able to do that? No, you'll drown yourself. Will you not? So that, I think, answers the question quite simply, yeah.
Question is, weed is a plant and grown on earth. Isn't everything grown on earth halal? Why is weed an exception?
Yeah, so that's not correct, that everything that is grown on the earth is halal. Wolf's bane, okay? I work with wolf's bane in my own lab. Wolf's bane is grown on the earth, okay? It's grown in the Amazon particularly. Go and eat it, okay? Take it and consume it. What will happen to you? Within a minute, you'll die, all right? Does that make it halal to eat? No. So the very premise that everything on the earth is halal, that's crazy. Because if it's poison, it's not halal, right? Marijuana or otherwise. Yeah.
The next question is asking advice for parents how to handle the situation. The question is, how should parents handle the situation? Most of the time, the parents are unaware that their children are smoking weed. How can we make this topic more approachable so kids feel comfortable talking to their parents about it and opening up about smoking weed and the problems they face in their everyday life?
Yeah, so being a parent myself, I'll say this, that it's not easy. Why? Because you want to be aware of what your children are doing. And from the looks of it, there are no parents here. You guys are all too young to be parents, although you can see I'm a father. But I will say this, so speaking maybe on the perspective of your parents, awareness. A lot of the parents, because they haven't grown up here in the West, they are not aware of what's happening around them or how rampant the use of marijuana is. So they assume that their child is immune to it. Greater awareness is the first step. Parents must know what's happening. That doesn't mean you snoop around, you spy on your child. No, you want to build a relationship that's based on trust. To come and say to them that, look, come and tell me what's happening in your life so that I know. And I won't fault you for it, but if you're doing something wrong, according to my religion, according to our religion, then maybe we should talk about it and ask the question why you're doing it. Why is it that you have fallen into this trap? That's how parenting should be, because if we coerce, we force, and we use devious tactics, and spying is a devious tactic, then there's a good chance that that child will rebel, that they will go the other direction. And so for parents, awareness is the first step. It must be through awareness and seeking out the right means to ensure the person at least listens and doesn't go the opposite direction. That is, it's not easy, but I think that is key. Yeah.
The next question is, I have many friends that smoke weed say they are not addicted and they can quit smoking weed at any time. Is weed truly addictive?
Yes, of course. Of course. I knew people in high school, we're talking ages ago, decades ago, who were potheads, all right? And they would call themselves potheads. And they were addicted. So think about it. The body, the brain, how does THC work? Well, or marijuana in this case, cannabis. The brain has what are called cannabinoid receptors. All right? And cannabinoid receptors, essentially when activated in the brain, cause the feeling of euphoria, pleasure, all right? Does the human body like pleasure or does it hate it? It likes pleasure, all right? Very simply, it likes pleasure. And if you repeatedly stimulate those receptors in the brain, from a physiological perspective, what's going to happen to them? You're going to want more of it, is it not? There's no human being who's going to say, oh, this is pleasurable, stop doing it, right? It's human nature. And hence, it's known that marijuana is addictive. So the claim that, well, it's not addictive, I can stop at any time, so why is it haram? It's because it's an intoxicant. Yes, it can cause addiction, but just one use of it is haram. Let's say you use it one time. Let's say you use it once every year. You know that you're not going to get addicted. You're strong. You smoke it once a year. It's still haram. It's an intoxicant. Its usage is haram.
I'm aware that my friends smoke weed, but I don't know what I can do to help them stop. What are some things to do or say to help them stop smoking?
Yeah, that's tough. Because again, it means that the person who's giving the advice knows why they are smoking it. We can't just go and say to a person, stop doing it, it's haram. You could, but chances are they already know it's haram. Chances are they know it's prohibited. You're not allowed to smoke marijuana. And let me clarify this part, that according to the rulings of Samahat al-Sayyid al-Sistani, that it's not just the marijuana bud itself that you make into, or the one that contains the high amounts of THC that you convert into essentially marijuana cigarettes. It's any part of the plant, any derivative of that plant is prohibited to consume it, all right? You're not allowed to consume any part of that plant. And so when you talk about somebody who is smoking it and using it, any part of it, the person who's giving the advice has to understand that why are they smoking it to begin with? Is it because of peer pressure? But maybe one of the ways in which you can counsel them, one, by saying, yes, of course, it is haram. Don't do something that will displease God. This is just temporary pleasure that you're seeking. Try to find long-term pleasure. The other is speak to them and ask them that other than the temporary pleasure, why do you think you're taking it? There must be a reason. Is it just because you're following a group of people? Or is it because you're lacking something in your life? That maybe there's a hole in your life of some sort. It may be, it may not be. And to address those things. That why do you have to do this? There are other ways of getting sort of physical pleasure. I'll tell you guys one of them. I'm an avid runner. I run. I play soccer more than I run, but when I don't play soccer, I run. When you run long, long distances, what happens to you? You guys know? It's called runner's high. And it's really, there are studies that demonstrate it's from the release of endorphins in the brain. Those endorphins, when you've run 10, 15 miles, you lie there, it's pleasurable, all right? It's a natural sense in the body from the physical exertion, right? So there are ways of feeling naturally pleased, all right, without having to use illicit drugs.
The next one is regarding pregnancy. Weed is medically proven to reduce cramps, reduce nausea, and improve eating when pregnant. Is it okay to consume weed then, and if the doctor says it's okay? If I'm prescribed medical marijuana, is it still haram?
Yes. So that's something that let's be real clear about, okay? Saying that marijuana or the use of marijuana is medically beneficial, all right, versus it being the final recourse in your treatment are two very different things. Does that make sense? All right. So if I'm saying that marijuana can treat my cramps, can treat pain, can treat suffering, the first question that should come into a true believer's mind is there anything else that can do the same thing? All right? The same example goes for something like red wine, all right? And maybe I've mentioned this before, is that people say that red wine is very good for your heart, okay? Good for heart, to prevent heart disease. So the question is it the only thing that people can take to prevent heart disease? No. There's cholesterol-reducing medications. You can take nitroglycerin. You can take beta blockers. You can do a whole bunch of other things that you don't need to take red wine to prevent heart disease or save your heart. In the same way with marijuana, is marijuana the only medical recourse to prevent cramps and pain and other symptoms? No, it's not. It's absolutely not. There are other treatments. If it was the only treatment, then marijuana would be the bedrock of clinical practice, would it not? You would find it being prescribed in every hospital in the world. You'd find it being used and marked down in the AMA's standard catalog, that this is what we must use. But it is not. It is only legal in certain states and in certain countries of the world, meaning that there are other solutions to this problem, right? And so let's take the other case where absolutely there is no treatment for you. And marijuana is a solution to your problem because there's no other recourse. Then yes, the marja will say, if that is the case and the doctor prescribes it, take it. Then it'll help you.
The next question is, can we take CBD?
Yeah, good question. That question comes a lot. No, you cannot. You cannot take CBD. CBD is a part. It comes from the hemp plant, all right? It is a derivative. It is an oil that comes off, cannabidiol is an oil basically that comes off of the plant. It contains small amounts of THC. There are people who sell CBD, they say on the label that it's 0% THC on it. There's no like intoxicating substance. The THC that's in there is very low or almost negligible. But again, according to the ruling of Samahat al-Sayyid Sistani, any part of the marijuana plant is not permissible to consume.
Thank you. When you are in a situation where your friends or the people around you are drinking, you should leave that place and not be around them. Is that the same for marijuana? Should I still hang out with them? Should I cut contact from them?
Yes, it is haram. There's no other answer. Why is there a difference between drinking alcohol and smoking marijuana? They're both haram. You should not be in the company of people who are doing it.
So the next question is about social media. Media plays a huge influence on the everyday life of almost everyone. Many times we are subject to the glorification of drugs and drug culture without us having control over it. How can us Shia Muslims combat this by still being a part of society? Do you think we have the ability to change the media's perception of drugs?
Yeah, good question. Tough question. And I appreciate the plug, by the way. I'm not particularly media savvy, but living in this world, you have to somehow know. And again, I'm going to give the same answer I gave in the beginning, which I'm almost certain some people will not like, all right? But it's my feeling, this is my personal feeling on this, is that are you going to stop the media from talking about drugs and alcohol and premarital sex and this and that and all these things? Will you stop it? No. Can you stop your children from looking at it on their phones if you have given them an iPhone? No, you cannot. Put as many parental controls on it. Will it stop them? No, because if they want to see it, they'll find a way to crack the code and see it. Yes? You cannot stop it. The flow of information is too much today. It's just too much. It's not like the days when I was a kid and there was basically 2 channels on a television and nothing else. So in those days, it was simpler times. But for you guys, it's tough. Lots of information. So my feeling is, what do? You have to know what you're looking at. You cannot shield yourself and say, I'm just not going to look. Yes, you shouldn't look. Definitely don't look. But don't do so in such a manner in which I'm going to lock up my phone in a box and just not touch it or go live in a cave. No, you can't. You live in society, you're going to be faced with that information. That flow of information will never stop, and it's only going to increase. And so the only way to combat it, in my personal opinion, is to become aware that it's there, know that it's wrong and its effects on you, and figure out a means to stop looking at it. Because otherwise, it's always going to be there. You can't run away. And as far as changing perception about drugs, I don't know. I don't think we can, to some degree. I hate that answer, but how do we change the perception of a lot of things that we consider to be immoral or improper in a secular society? Not easy, because the ball is rolling, the snowball is rolling in the other direction. The momentum is in the other direction. And so what do? How do we ensure that, well, we reverse the messaging that goes out? I don't know. Maybe we just ensure that our own kids and our own people know what they are going to face and that it's bad and it's not going to help and to stay away from it. But to change the universal messaging, I don't know that we can do that.
Thank you. The next question is regarding Adderall. So the person says, I am prescribed ADHD, attention deficit disorder medication in the form of Adderall. I have been prescribed this medication almost my whole life. I have a friend who studies with me since we are in the same courses. When they found out I am prescribed Adderall, they asked for it. I had refused multiple times, but finally gave in and gave them one to try. Now that I have given them one, they keep asking for more. How can I say no since they say it helps them focus? I have told them that if they said it works, why not get a legit prescription? Their response was their parents would never allow them to, and they don't need that many. Sheikh, how do I get out of this situation? I want to believe I have tried everything, but maybe you can help.
Doing the hard thing requires strength, courage, for anything. And in this case, I wish there was a simple answer, or maybe a more complex answer than what I'm about to say is, but just say no, right? You have to why is this person giving the Adderall to their friend? Because they feel some compassion to their friend, right? You feel compassion to your friend that it helps them, right? It gives them some focus, allows them to focus. And indeed, there are studies that have demonstrated that Adderall can do this for people who don't have ADHD or sort of diagnosed ADHD. But in this case, you have to say, is my compassion harming them? Is it causing them to go down a path that they don't need to be on? Mainly in the sense that, and Dr. Khan just mentioned it, that the more you take any medication, the brain has plasticity inside of it, and it changes. So the more you take that medication, whether you need it or not, particularly strong medication like Adderall, your brain is going to change. And so that in itself should tell you that, look, I don't need to give it. I'm taking it because I have a diagnosed need for it, but this person doesn't need it. And so the real compassion should be, God, there could be long-term harm for them in this. And maybe that's what should be expressed to them, that I need it. I'm being given this under the care of a licensed physician. You are not. And the long-term ramifications of that could be potentially harmful to you. And I don't want to do that to you. I don't want to harm you. Yes, right now I feel for you because you think it helps you with your attention and your studying, but I'm afraid it's going to cause you long-term damage or some problem later on in life, and I don't want to do that. Maybe that's the way to answer it.
Thank you. So the next question regards drugs all around. So I think it's like they stated weed, alcohol, and the harder drugs like psychedelics. They said that I know people that do hard drugs. There's no way that they stop. They won't be able to function without it or handle withdrawals. Are there some ways you can recommend them to completely stop?
Rehab. If the question is describing it in the way I understood it, that they cannot do without it, they're addicted, right? The person is addicted. It's that simple. And the only way to deal with addiction is to go to a rehab clinic. Please don't think, and this I think you should hear me clearly, don't think that because you're addicted to drugs, suddenly if you sit on the musalla and pray, that God is going to cure you. Yes, prayer is good. Asking Allah is good. Turning to Allah is needed, of course. But if you have a problem, you need to seek professional help. Go get professional help. There's nothing else that can be said about that.
The next question is regarding nicotine, cigarettes, and the vaping. The question says, nicotine and cigarettes are addictive and affects the brain and body. Why isn't this haram? And then the second part of the question is, vaping is very common in youths in some ways is a gateway for things like weed. So should I prefer to vape instead of smoking weed since vaping is halal and weed is haram?
Well, easy answer to that is do the halal thing for sure. Never do the haram thing. If you have an option between doing halal and haram, there's no question which one you should do. But I, as a physiologist, as a health scientist, as an environmental scientist, who actually, I have colleagues who work on vaping and are looking at vaping, and I actually sit on the committees of doctoral students who've done their work on the health effects of vaping, can tell you that it's harmful. There's no question it's harmful. Whether it's allowed or not allowed, it's harmful. Just like cigarette smoking is allowed, but it's harmful to you. All right? Why something is allowed in Islam and not allowed is not for me to say. I'm not a marja. Marja is the one who will go in and look at the evidence, and based on the Holy Quran, based on the authentic hadith, based on what he reads in those passages, and he will give you a ruling as to why, if something is halal or haram. And sometimes he will tell you why. In the case of marijuana and other illicit drugs, it's because of intoxication, because it causes intoxication. When it comes to cigarette smoke, yes, it's addictive, but it's not necessarily intoxicating. It's not causing you to become sort of loss of consciousness or loss of ability to reason, all right? So in those, or vaping in the same sense. And now they're actually even talking about CBD going into vaping pens and other sorts of devices, all right? That's haram. CBD is haram, remember that. That's a different issue.
So we have two last remaining questions. Again,
You
if
got
you
through
guys,
them pretty quick, yeah?
yeah, we got great job. So yeah, if you're listening online, please continue to text me your questions. I see some more people are sending me questions, so thank you for that. My number again is 630-818-0210. So the question is,
Are you sure you want to share that out on YouTube?
yeah, that's why I said my number's on the flyer, but you got to make it easy for people.
We're
nowadays.
gonna mute that out. You know, he's gonna give it out 6-3 beep, and it's gone.
So the question is, as Muslims, we have learned that it is imperative to adapt to the area, state, country you live in. If weed is legal in Illinois and many other states, why is it still haram?
Yeah, I think Dr. Khan answered that. That really, in all honesty, if Islam were to adapt and change and accommodate social circumstances, then everything would become permissible. Everything would. And the first would be alcohol drinking, would it not? I mean, that was already, alcohol drinking is allowed. Does that mean Islam conforms to it? No, it does not. The beauty of religion and your adherence to religion is that you know the same rule applied to a human being thousands of years ago as it does to you today. And that the same rule will apply to another human being 100 years, 500 years from now. It is the same standard applied across every society, every time, all right? Why is that great? Because then when you get judged, you're judged on an even platform with every other human being. Whereas if the rules changed, then the standard for judgment would be different. And Allah would never allow that because He is just.
So I just got a text message saying CBD oil can't be used. My question is, as physical therapist, is it permissible to allow patients to use CBD oil by keeping sample in office? If they want to buy it, is it allowed? These patients who are in chronic pain coming for physical therapy, is earning from this forbidden to us?
Yes, so CBD is not allowed. It's not allowed. And so keeping it in a physical therapist's office or in your home or purchasing it is not permissible. And earning from it or giving it out as samples is not allowed. Yes, it has a calming effect on the body. It removes some aspects of pain and debilitation. But again, the question becomes, are there not other means of doing so? Are there not other ways of treating people than having to resort to CBD? In this case, again, I will only give you what the marja has said, and that is it's not allowed.
I have younger siblings that are starting to go to high school and knowing that they will be exposed to people who do it. What advice would you give to these younger kids who are growing up?
Talk to them. Don't assume they know. Don't assume they'll get to high school and automatically something will click in their minds and say, oh, that person is bad, they're smoking marijuana, I should stay away from them. Don't do that. Talk to them. Talk to them. Communicate with them. Show them yourself. Go in to your phone, to their phone, and show them the type of paraphernalia that they're going to be exposed to, that they will encounter. Show them the type of messaging. Show them the effects of it. Go through it with them. Talk to them that if you smoke marijuana or do other drugs, this is what's going to happen to you. Explain to them why people take it. Why people are so, maybe it's the danger of taking something illegal. Well, in Illinois it's now allowed, but in my day, it was the danger of it, right? That, oh, we're going to get caught by the cops, and it heightened sort of the feeling of, let me smoke it and I'll feel even higher. Why? Because of the perceived danger of getting caught, the riskiness of the activity. But go in and talk to them. Why are people taking this? Identify it to them. Don't hide it from them. Don't hide and pretend like they've seen it and they know what it is, or that suddenly, or that they go to school and they just aren't even aware. No, they are aware. Your siblings are aware, just like every kid is aware of what is happening. They know more than you know, probably. More than the parents know for sure.
So I had mentioned that the United States usually talks about drug use in like 6th grade. So what advice do you have to parents? Do you think that parents should talk to kids at a younger age than 6th grade, or do you think the educational system should be the only way that these kids know, start to learn about drugs, or can you give your input on that?
And so age, I don't think there's a standard age. There are some children you can talk to about these things when they are a little younger because they mature quicker. Girls definitely mature quicker than boys do. I can say that because I was an idiot until I was maybe 18, and even then I marginally got smarter. But you see, women become mature and smarter much quicker, and they're more able to grasp the things that they perceive to be dangerous in life, whereas boys are not. Boys are more reckless. So age, I don't think, is necessarily easy to delineate and say at this age you start talking to them. But certainly at an age when a child is, I would say, cognizant enough and has enough critical understanding to know that drugs are bad, that you begin to talk to them. You don't leave it to the school to tell them. Because again, the school is going to tell them from a secular standpoint, right? Whereas you as a father or a mother, you will walk them through it holding their hand. You will be there next to them, talking to them that this is appropriate or this is not appropriate. And why is it not appropriate? And why, and this is maybe an important point, that it is part of our identity that we stay away from these things. Part of the reason why people stray is because they don't identify strongly enough with being a Muslim and adhering believer. And they identify more with the secular image of what they are seeing in school. And part of our job as parents is to instill identity and to say that our identity is not to do this. It is not to listen to music, it is not to go to clubs, it is not to drink alcohol, it's not to smoke marijuana, because our identity is X, Y, and Z, what we have defined for you. And to give them suitable replacements for those pleasures that they think others are having that they are being denied of. Give them another pleasure. For my son, it's hamburgers. So I take my son for hamburgers every week. And we're lucky in North Carolina, we've got good halal, like good quality burgers, you know? So I don't know if you can get high off of a burger, but I swear sometimes the way he eats them, it seems like he's getting high off of a burger. But give suitable replacements to what may be perceived as pleasurable.
So one of the questions that came in was regarding the ruling that no part of the plant was permissible to use, even if it is administered typically.
Even if it's administered what? I'm sorry.
Topically.
Topically.
Sorry, I'm not.
Oh, sorry, I know.
But,
Go ahead.
so the specific, again, when was the ruling made that no part of the plant was permissible to use, even if it is administered topically?
Yes.
Is it recent? Is the ruling recent?
So let me clarify that. When I say use, I mean consume, okay? Consume, meaning you smoke it, you eat it, you drink it. Okay? That's what I meant by consuming any part of the marijuana plant, the cannabis plant, the hemp plant. When you use it topically as a cream, it's allowed. There's no problem with that. You're not consuming it, you're not ingesting it, you're not inhaling it, you're taking it as a cream, all right, and you're putting it on your sore knee. That's fine. There's no problem with it.
All right, thank you. That concludes all the questions that we had received beforehand. So now the questions are open up for the room. So if you guys have a question for the Sheikh, please raise your hand and I will hand you over the mic. If there are no other questions, then, oh, I have a question, or there's a question over here.
So you mentioned rehab was a good resource for people who want to quit and genuinely have an addiction. As you probably know, living in a very Desi Arab society, rehab and therapy is something that's very looked down upon by our elders. So for those people who do want to quit and genuinely have an addiction, but they don't know where to look for or who to ask, what advice would you give those people of what steps to take to move in that direction?
So it shouldn't be a stigma, unfortunately. We treat the entire body of a human being in the manner that it needs clinical help when it becomes sick, right? So when you become sick, you have heart disease, you've got a stomach problem, some other ailment, everyone will say go to see a doctor, all right? Nobody's going to say go into the shed in the back and pull out some chemical and treat yourself. Nobody's going to say that. But when it comes to the mind, I don't know. There's some block in people's minds, particularly Eastern people, who think that the mind shouldn't be treated in the same manner. The mind is exactly the same as the rest of the body in the sense that it's activated by receptors being targeted by chemicals, those chemicals causing a downstream reaction in the cell, and then something happening. That happens for your heart, it happens for your gut, and that's why when you take medication, that medication goes in and targets some receptor in some cases. The mind is the same way. And when I say mind, we're talking about an intangible part of the human being. So what do you do if you need mental health counseling or some sort of treatment? There are. We have in the Muslim community many mental health specialists, people who are good Muslims, devout Muslims, who will never do anything against the religion of Islam and who provide therapies and counseling that is very suitable, not just from the perspective of mental health well-being, but from the perspective of being a Muslim, what's good for the Muslim person. And so how do you get those resources? Well, you can do a Google search and look for Muslim health counselors or Muslim psychologists, and you will find them. They are there, I can tell you. I know them, I work with them. The other option is to contact big organizations, like I work with Imam, the Imam Mehdi Association of Marja'iyya, which is the liaison office of Sayyid Sistani. And we have resources that we can connect you to, potentially, to help you with these sorts of things and bring awareness to these sorts of conditions. But it's there, it's certainly there, it's just a matter of connecting to the right people. But if you need information, you can always reach out to me directly, and I can try to help.
So a question came in for clarification regarding the CBD topical ointment. So CBD oil as topical ointment is okay to calm pain?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any more questions from inside the room? Anyone need clarification regarding anything that the Sheikh has mentioned? Awesome. Thank you so much, Sheikh. I forgot to mention one announcement. The IEC Husseini School student-led Majlis will be next Sunday, October 3rd at 11:30 a.m. So please, it will be broadcasted live via IEC Husseini's YouTube channel. Sorry, I did not mention that announcement before, but thank you so much, Sheikh, for your time and giving us all the clarification and advice that we needed. There is pizza in the back for everyone who is here right now. And again, please don't forget to look at the IEC Youth Group apparel. There's some nice items there. And inshallah, please please continue to watch the majlises that happen tonight. Continue tonight at 8 p.m. and inshallah the Arba'in Julus will be tomorrow, and the IEC Arba'in walk will be on Tuesday. So inshallah, if everyone could please recite a loud salawat. Allahumma salli. And thank you so much again.